Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradhari Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradhari Jashoda Nandana Vraja Janaranjana Jashoda Nandana Vraja Janaranjana Jamuna Tiravanachari Jamuna Tiravanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradhari Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradhari Jashoda Nandana Vraja Janaranjana Jashoda Nandana Vraja Janaranjana Jamuna Tiravanachari Jamuna Tiravanachari Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivajagacharya Ashtadashata Shishimad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. All glories to the sum of devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to the sum of devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to the sum of devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 9, text number 33. Yada rahitam atmanam bhuta indriya guna ashayehi swarupena maya upetam pashyan swarajyam richati hidarahitam atmanam bhutindriya guna shayehi swarupena mayopetam pashyan swarajyam richati hidarahitam atmanam bhutindriya guna shayehi swarupena mayopetam pashyan swarajyam richati Yadarahitam Bhutindriya Gunashayehi Swarupena Mayopetam Pashyan Swarajam Richati. Did you repeat?
Swarupena mayopetam Pashyan swarajyam richati
Yadarahitam
Yadarahitam
Bhutendriya Gunashayaihi Swarupena mayopetam Pashyan Swarajyam Richati.
Yadarahitam
Bhutendriya Gunashayaihi
Swarupena mayopetam Pashyan swarajyam richati Yadarahitam Bhutendriya Gunashayaihi Swarupena mayopetam Pashyan swarajyam richati.
Mataji's.
Yadarahitam Bhutendriya Gunashayaihi Swarupena mayopetam Pashyan swarajyam richati.
Yada, when, Rahitam, freed from, Atmanam, self, Bhuta, material elements, Indriya, material senses, Guna Ashayehi, under the influence of the material modes of nature, Svarupena, and pure existence, Maya, by me, Upetam, approaching, Pashyan, by seeing, Swarajyam, spiritual kingdom, Richati, enjoy. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. When you are free from the conception of gross and subtle bodies, and when your senses are free from all influence of the modes of the material nature, you will realize the pure form, your pure form in my association. At that time, you will be situated in pure consciousness. In the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, it is said that a person whose only desire is to render transcendental loving service to the Lord is a free person in any condition of material existence. That service attitude is the Swarupa, or real form of the living entity. Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in the Chaitanya Charitamrita also confirms this statement by declaring that the real spiritual form of the living entity is eternal servitorship to the Supreme Lord. The Mayavad school shudders at the thought of a service attitude in the living entity, not knowing that in the transcendental world, the service of the Lord is based on transcendental love. Transcendental loving service is never to be compared to the forced service of the material world. In the material world, even if one is under the conception that he is no one's servant, he is still the servant of his senses, under the direction of the material modes. Factually, no one is master here in the material world, and therefore the servants of the senses have a very bad experience of servitude. They shudder at the thought of service because they have no knowledge of the transcendental position. In transcendental loving service, the servitor is as free as the Lord. The Lord is Swarat, or fully independent, and the servant is also fully independent, or Swarat, in the spiritual atmosphere, because there is no forced service. There, the transcendental loving service is due to spontaneous love. A reflected glimpse of such service is experienced in the service of the mother unto the son, the friend's service unto the friend, or the wife's service unto the husband. These reflections of service by friends, parents, or wives are not forced, but are due only to love. Here in the material world, however, the loving service is only a reflection. The real service, or service in Swarupa, is present in the transcendental world in association with the Lord. The very same service in transcendental love can be practiced in devotion here. This verse is also applicable to the Jnani school. The enlightened Jnani, when free from all material contaminations, namely, the gross and subtle bodies, together with the senses of the material modes of nature, is placed in the Supreme and is thus liberated from material bondage. The Jnanis and the devotees are actually in agreement up to the point of liberation from material contamination. But whereas the Jnanis remain pacified on the platform of simple understanding, the devotees develop further spiritual advancement and loving service. The devotees develop a spiritual individuality in their spontaneous service attitude, which is enhanced on and on up to the point of Madhurya Rasa, or transcendental loving service reciprocated between the lover and the beloved. Om Jnanatimmirandasya Gananjana Shalakiya Chakshura Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stabitam Dina Bhutali Swayamupakada Mayam Tadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Tapata Kamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sakarjatam Sahagana Rakanatam Vitam Tam Shajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitamscha He Krishna Kuruna Sindudina Bandhu Jagatpati Gopisha Kupika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Site Devi Pranamami Hare Priye Vansha Kapatyubhishcha Kripasinubhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavibhyo Namo Namaha Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prashtaya Putale Shrimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Namane Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prashtaya Putale Shrimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Prasharne Nirvishesha Shunivari Pashtyate Tishtarne Putir Mahadviri Maflor Vibor Nirmai Shitiye Damush Purasha Punkti Gunan Shurashatmaka Soranka Shishta Bhagavam Shamsime. When you are free from the conception of gross and subtle bodies, and when your senses are free from all influence of the modes of material nature, you will realize your pure form and my association. At that time, you will be situated in pure consciousness. Krishna speaks to Brahma. Garbhodakshaya Vishnu speaks to Brahma. Prabhupada qualifies what this, he explains what this freedom from the conception of gross and subtle bodies is that when a person only possesses the desire to render transcendental loving service to the Lord, only then is he free from conceptions of gross and subtle bodies, even though he may be within them. He quotes, Srila Prabhupada quotes, how does it go? Iha yasa hare dasye karma namanasa gira nikila svapi avastasu jivan muktasa uchyate. One who serves the Lord with his body, mind, etc., like this, in words, while in the material world, it only does so is considered liberated. So jivan mukta, even though he may be residing within the material world. So the qualification, Krishna doesn't speak to Brahma here that only when you give up this body, when you're free, he's saying when you're free from the conceptions of gross and subtle bodies. But he's not saying specifically when you give up this body, because you can become liberated even within this body. Of course, actually here, he says, Opetyam Pashyan Swarajyam, you can richati, you can enjoy. You can approach the spiritual kingdom and you can enjoy it when you give up these conceptions, even in this life. Another angle of looking at this is Brahma, although he's having darshan of the Garbhodakshaya Vishnu, he still wasn't perfect, somehow. Interestingly enough. We hear of Yasadev in the first canto, he's seeing Krishna, simultaneously he's seeing Krishna's energy behind him, Maya distinct from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Here, Brahma is seeing Garbhodakshaya Vishnu. One thing that means his realization isn't complete, that's one point. Because he's not experienced Krishna. Garbhodakshaya Vishnu, he has some relationship with the material energy, whereas Brahma, we don't hear of him, could be in a previous millennium, but we don't hear of him specifically gaining darshan of Krishna here. So, but aside from that, it's a significant point. He's seeing Vishnu, and Vishnu is instructing him that when you're free from the conception of gross and subtle bodies, you'll be free from all these things, etc. like this. And he says in the next verse, the next verse isn't so much relevant, but this implies that he's not perfect. This implies that he's conditioned by gross and subtle influences. Otherwise, why would Garbhodakshaya Vishnu speak such a thing into Lord Brahma? It's just like Nrsimha. I'm trying to think how that section goes. He glorifies Prahlad as a pure devotee, but Brahma isn't necessarily being glorified like this. Of course, he is a pure devotee, but it's just interesting how Vishnu is speaking this to Brahma. Brahma is getting darshan of Vishnu, but nevertheless he's getting instructions on how to become free from the material condition in which he's undergoing. So, anyway, other points of this verse is that Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he takes this verse more in relationship to Gyanis becoming liberated, and then moving on to the relationship, developing a relationship with Krishna, which Srila Prabhupada takes in this purport. He says this verse is also applicable to the Gyani school, and he explains this word Swarajyam, which Srila Prabhupada translates here as the spiritual kingdom. He explains in terms of a relationship with Krishna, that when the living entity is free from the influences of the gross and subtle conceptions, or the gross and subtle bodies, then at that time he goes on to awaken. He renders devotional service. Specifically, he approaches Maya Upetam. He approaches Krishna, and then he enjoys he explains this Swarajyam as one's rasa with Krishna, Shanta Dasya, etc., Vatsalya, Madhurya. So Gyanis, therefore Srila Prabhupada explains here that the Gyanis and devotees are actually in agreement up to the point of liberation from material contamination, but Gyanis remain pacified on the platform of simple understanding. The devotees develop further. So there's further development. That further development is being described here by Garbhodakashaya Vishnu. You could take it as one such explanation. Otherwise, up until the point of liberation, the process is largely the same. Of course, the devotees, we accept slightly different. Generally, we speak like this, but our philosophy is somewhat the same. There are minor disagreements within it, even though Srila Prabhupada is writing that here, just like we disagree over the process by which to become liberated. We disagree that Gyanis just through dhyana, etc., can become liberated. They can approach a platform, but one thing is not true liberation because patentiyanta, they fall down again. Another thing is that it's an impractical mode. There's a yuga dharma, and by executing the yuga dharma and different yugas, it's different deity worship, sacrifice, dhyan, meditation, in this age chanting the holy name. So there's different means of attainment of moksha, not just through the process which is described only in the Upanishads. You have to take the Vedic literature in total. So we also disagree on finer points like this, but generally the philosophy is the same, that the living entity is conditioned by the material body, and because of the material body, not just the material body, gross body, and also subtle body. He says here, Atmanam Bhuta Indriya. Indriya can include, means the gross senses. It can also include the subtle senses, just like Krishna says, Manashashtana Indriyani, that the senses, he also throws the mind in there. So there's this gross body, there's also the subtle body. We're conditioned by these things, and we form relationships with this world based upon these things. We consider somebody a relative because they have a relationship with their gross body. This is a basic philosophy. We consider somebody a friend based upon a relationship we have with our gross body. Otherwise, well, we're born in a particular place, and those people we meet through the means of this gross body, we develop friendships with, we have bodily relationships with others, other jivas, depending upon the particular circumstances in which our body takes place. We have, obviously, we have friends, parents, specifically cousins, relatives, and then also, in a more extended way, we're born with a particular race or nationality. Then we feel a particular affection towards those of the same race, the same nationality, even those who speak the same language. Why? Because the body. Because we're conditioned, our soul is conditioned by we, who are the soul, are conditioned by the material modes which overlay us. So we identify with these things. We identify with I am this, I am that, I am this person's son, I am this person's friend, I belong to this country, this person is my kinsman, this person is my countryman, this person speaks my language, this person is of my culture, this person is of a different culture, this person is of a different religion, this person is of the same or different religion. We make conceptions like this in the material world, and we form friendships, relationships, etc. like this based upon these conceptions. Although it's unreal. It's unreal in the sense that we've accepted it only for this life, and we've had so many different parents, children, friendships, relatives, countrymen, masters, servants even. Srila Prabhupada is writing here that we have those who are trying to... Factually, nobody here is in the material world is a master, and therefore the servants of the senses have a very bad experience of servitude. They shudder at the thought of service because they have no knowledge of the transcendental position. So people have a bad experience of servitude in this material world. Not just servitude, any relationship, though one point is that any relationship is based on servitude. Otherwise, it's not, for the most part. Relationship between friends is there because one friend serves another, as is explained here. A glimpse is seen in this world. The service of the mother unto the son, the friend's service unto the friend, or the wife's service unto the husband. The employee is serving some boss. The servant is serving the king. So relationships in this world, as Prabhupada explains in Gita, is based upon service. But in this world, because we try to enjoy our senses, we have a very bad experience of these things, of servitude. And relationships in general, therefore, people get fried out and have bad experience in whatever sort of relationships they have, just like it's listed here. The mother unto the son, the friend unto the friend, the wife unto the husband. The divorce rate is 50% or something in this country. Many times you see, people have different friends in life, and then they move on to different friends. Those friends which we had as children, I don't know, at least for me, I don't keep in contact with them anymore. Those friends which we had in school, early schooling, high school, etc. like that, we may keep in touch with them. Those friends we had at college, we may keep in touch with them. So friends come, friends go. Even the wife may come, the wife may go, or husband, respectively. Even parents may come and go. Even the relationship between the son and the mother, at least in this Kali Yuga, it can come and go. Of course, the body relationship is there, so long the body remains, and it'll be annihilated when the body goes. But still, nevertheless, the relationship is such that even that relationship can break, in the sense that bad exchanges between the children and the parents. You see some children even file restraining orders against their parents, or sometimes the parents file a restraining order against the children, interestingly enough. So it's such as the situation is. So we have bad experience. Of course, not always, not everybody's life is like this, but we have bad experience. If we don't have bad experience in one of these relationships, inevitably we have bad experience in some sort of relationship. Why? Because perverted reflection of the real mood of servitude. We're trying to, in the material world, on the plea of serving others, actually what's going on, we're trying to gratify our own senses. The mother serves the child, materially speaking. Why? Ultimately, because she's trying to gratify herself. She's trying to enjoy some sort of rasa out of that relationship of having a child, etc., like that. So we have these terms, extended sense gratification, thinking in terms of family, society, country, etc., like this. So it's extended sense gratification. And sense gratification always results in misery, frustration, and dissatisfaction. So, sometimes we can see this, but sometimes we can't see this. For most people, to say such a thing, that a mother taking care of her child, or the relationship between a mother and a child, materially speaking, of course, is based upon sense gratification. Even the word sense gratification is not there in the English dictionary, but it's out of selfish desire. It seems very funny, because it's seemingly one of the most selfless things that you can do in the world. You take care of a baby. What does the baby do for you? Nothing. Practically speaking, until it grows up, the mother, so many things. They clean the baby, they feed the baby, they look after the baby's safety, the baby's welfare, they make arrangements for the child's future, they provide education to the child, and the child, in so many different ways, even the child doesn't want to accept it in so many ways. It causes trouble to the parents. It doesn't want to accept what the parents are giving it, even if it's for the child's welfare, just like children often they want to play. They don't want to receive an education. But the parents force an education on the child because it's good for their welfare. So nor can the child really understand what good the parents are doing for it. So it looks like the parent is acting selflessly, but actually it's selfish. This is our understanding, because ultimately it's based upon trying to enjoy the material body. It's based upon acting on these relationships which are formed through the material body. Consequently, all these things come about: misery, illusion, lamentation, anxiety, etc. like this. So we have bad experience. But the real experience, because we have no knowledge of the transcendental position. So this is bad service, and even in this word service, just like we have, I don't know, there's different terms in the working world. We have service industry, which typically implies you're like food, generally within the food business, or something like a cashier or something like that. It's a very low position at the service industry. What is that? Janitor, yeah. Janitor, cleaning, some things like that. Very menial things. Generally, this word service is used for very menial, low-class tasks, just like you drive by, just like there's an auto shop down the road, so auto service. To service one's car, it's a very low-class thing to do to work on a vehicle. Not for Krishna, of course, but materially speaking, it's like, you're dealing with grease, metal, steel, rust, and, even somebody may know how to change their oil, but the job is so filthy that people just pay others to do it. So we associate service with these sort of like low-class, distasteful tasks, and therefore we have this bad experience. But in the transcendental realm, in transcendental loving service, the servitor is as free as the Lord himself. The Lord is Swarat, and the servitor is Swarat. Srila Prabhupada will give the example, although it's material example, that the king enjoys to a certain level of sense gratification. Consequently, his ministers can also enjoy the same wealth of the king. Of course, always in this world, it's not like that. More the king is trying to exploit his ministers. But the servants of Krishna, they can enjoy as much, if not more, by Krishna's mercy, than Krishna himself. And they enjoy specifically, as Krishna is fully independent, the servitor is also fully independent. Nevertheless, at the same time, the servant is fully dependent on Krishna. He's happy in that relationship with Krishna because it's unconditional, and that aspect of love is present. Otherwise, in the material world, this is a very basic point. This is discussed in the intro of the Bhagavad Gita, but these things are present in the material world. Actually, Srila Prabhupada makes the point here, these reflections of service by the friends, parents, or wives are not forced, but are only done out of love, which is true. So too, in Krishna consciousness, service is performed willingly and voluntarily, and is done out of a sentiment of love. Otherwise, how can it be said to be service? It's characteristic of the swarup of the living entity. The very same service and transcendental love can be practiced in devotion here. So back to this point that we can, while residing in the material world, we can awaken this service attitude because it's inherent within us. This Jiver Nitya Krishna Das, ever living entity, is an eternal servant of Krishna. So immediately, even though we're covered by a gross body and subtle mind, false ego, so many things are conditioning us. We're within this universe which is composed of 10 layers, each progressively thicker than the next one. So we're pretty covered over in a very gross sense. But nevertheless, because we're eternal servitor of Krishna, we can always act on that position. Nothing can stop us from acting on that position. And immediately we can come to this point of rendering devotional service, theoretically at least, free from any sort of motive. How? You just serve Krishna and you don't ask for any sort of benefit from him. You try to render service to Krishna in such a way that's pleasing to him without looking for whatever benefit you can receive by your own, for yourself. And by doing this, we become happy, we become satisfied, and at that time, we're situated in pure consciousness. When we do so, when we act as such, because that's our swarup, to render unconditional service to Krishna, to be his eternal servant, when we act as his eternal servant, we're acting within that position. We're acting on the platform of a liberated soul. Even though we may be still conditioned, we may still have the material body, material mind, it may be affecting us and disturbing us, but if we go on serving Krishna without considerations of I and mine, then we progress in devotional service, and we're on the platform of liberation. So long we remain within that boat of becoming free from I and mine. Otherwise, if we carry on our conceptions of I, mine, conceptions of getting fruits from our karma, fruitive results wanting something for Krishna, or even desiring liberation from miseries. Jnana, fruits of jnana, and also two things like yogic siddhis, but generally people don't aspire for that quite often. That's quite rare. So if we maintain these things, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he told a story. There was a marriage party, and I think the bridegroom was to meet. Anyway, they were going to the site of the marriage, and they took a boat down a river. And they were to reach the next day, and the whole party, so the helmsman, he was rowing the boat, and then the party, it was overnight, so the party just went to sleep, to rest, to wake up for the next morning. And the party woke up the next morning, and they saw that they were in the exact same position that they were the night before. And they asked the boatman, what happened? And he said, I've been working so hard, I've been rowing so, well, first they accused him, but it was evident the boatman was working very hard. He was straining himself very much. But what happened is that he didn't take up the anchor. He was straining very hard to row the boat, but he had an anchor. The boat's anchor was situated down in the lake. It was loose in the lake, in the river. So, although he was working very hard, nothing happened. So, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he says that this anchor is the anchor of I and mind. If we maintain conceptions of I, mine, and also by that extension, conceptions of wanting fruitive results from devotional service, or even liberation from misery, and personal liberation, etc., like emerging into Krishna, then we may be rendering devotional service, but we don't go anywhere in doing so. Because because we're putting in that effort, but we forgot to pull up the anchor. Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, he says, Bahu Janma Kore Jadi Shravan Kirtan, Taputan Napai Krishna Pade Premadan. That we can go on chanting for many births, hearing and chanting for many births. Shravan Kirtan. Kirtan is supremely purifying, but if we go on in such a way with impure conceptions, and specifically we make offenses and don't follow the process properly, if we harbor material desire within our heart and refuse to give it up, if we maintain offenses, then we won't go anywhere. So one offense is hamamadis. What is that? How does that go? Anyway, to maintain a conception of I and mine. So through that comes the idea that I can enjoy this material world. So it's an offense to try and enjoy such. Aham mamadi paramo namni so parada krit. To consider the conception of I and mine as the highest. So this can impede our devotional service. Of course, we can't force. Well, devotional service isn't forced, just as is said here. It's only due to love, just as the relationship between a friend and another friend is voluntary. Nobody's forcing a friend and a friend to maintain that relationship. It's done out of love. Similarly, the parents and a child, or the husband and wife, such a relationship takes place out of one's voluntary will. So similarly, we engage in Krishna consciousness because we want to. We were inspired at one point to take the Krishna consciousness, or people are inspired to take the Krishna consciousness, and they're inspired, they're not forced. Otherwise, in the material world, we're forced to work for karma, or we're forced to work for results of jnana, due to the influence of the mode and material nature. Because this gross and subtle bodies, they force us to act like that. But when we take the devotional service, we have free will. We can choose Krishna. We're not forced to choose. In the material world, we have the illusion that we can choose things. Just like we have material desires. Say, I want to become the CEO of such and such company, but I want to be the CEO of such and such company because I took birth in the land where such a company existed, and I have a particular materially conditioned mind which forced me to enter into the ranks of that company and to desire promotion within that company. So we may have material desires, but we're being forced by material nature to act on and to carry out these material desires. Actually, we don't desire these things. The soul, ourselves, our swarup, we desire to render service to Krishna. So we can choose Krishna. So similarly, too, we can choose to give up material desires. It's a gradual thing, of course, but it begins with a point of choosing to give it up. Otherwise, if we harbor the material desires, then we'll never give it up. So yeah, we can choose to serve Krishna. Just as Brahma, he could easily enjoy his own senses, but he's choosing to serve Krishna. He's praying to Krishna. What is he asking for? Or actually here, he just said here, I turn to, people generally engage in all foolish acts, not really knowing the beneficial activities enunciated directly for you by their guidance. So he could, just as easily as any other conditioned soul in the material world, he could easily pray to Krishna for some sort of material benefit. It will be easy for him to do so because he's seeing Garbhodakashaya Vishnu directly, but he doesn't. What does he pray for? He prays for, or different things. He prays to be able to create the world as it was before, to engage in Krishna's service, in other words. And then he also prays that he may give up the false prestige or be protected. I pray that I may not be materially affected by my works, for thus I may be able to give up the false prestige of being the creator and not be deviated from the vibration of the Vedic hymns. May he bestow his benediction upon me by opening his lotus eyes. So Brahma prays for this. He prays for service, he prays for Krishna's merciful glance, and he prays for protection within his service. He doesn't pray for material benefits. So we should follow Brahma's example here. And how does Krishna respond? Immediately, the first thing Krishna says to him is that he saw that Lord Brahma was anxious, and he said, "O Brahma, depth of Vedic wisdom, don't be depressed nor anxious about the execution of creation. What you're asking from me has already been granted before." He says, "I've already given you this. You had the ability to do this already before. I'm going to give it again. Don't worry. Just situate yourself." And then he speaks these verses, which we're now going through. "Just render devotion, absorb yourself in devotional service unto me, and everything will be okay." He says in very technical language. "You'll be free from these material coverings. I will give you the intelligence how to create this world, and again you will receive." Brahma, I was speaking previously, he's asking for anugraha, he's asking for mercy. So Krishna, he says here that Tevarshiyan madanugraha. It comes in tomorrow's verse, that I'll give you my causeless mercy. Actually, he already has Krishna's causeless mercy. Not only will Krishna give his causeless mercy, he'll give it eternally, and it will be always increasing. So Brahma is getting more than he asked for. So this is the result of Brahma's prayers. He was deputed a particular duty by Krishna, and he carried out that duty despite being what he was hearing. We're hearing here. It came early in the chapter. Brahma was feeling anxious and I think depressed. The word was, here. He was very anxious about the construction. This comes even before the prayers too. But the Lord saw that Brahma was anxious about the planning and construction of the different planetary systems and was depressed upon seeing the devastating water. You can imagine, Lord Brahma, he already made the universe. Krishna already empowered him with the Shakti to do so. And Lord Brahma, he created the universe. He arranged, he beget progeny. Living entities were expanded throughout the 14 planetary systems. Everything was going on very nicely. He was serving Krishna in this way. Krishna deputed him in service. He carried out that service. Everything was going on. And then half the universe is inundated in devastating waters. It's quite discouraging. Everything he was working for is just smashed to bits. By the same energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, granted. But it's understandable how he may be depressed in the course of his service, how he may be anxious upon what to do. The whole thing just went to ruination, and he's wondering what to do, how to create the world as it was before. It's just like if you take a vase, there's some vase here. If you take this vase, just take a hammer to it and smash it, how are you going to rebuild the thing? Or even beyond that, more apt, you can imagine if Atlantis, take New Orleans, right? If that city is flooded by devastating waters, what are you going to do? How are you going to rebuild the city? So you go to the City Planning Commission of New Orleans. You say rebuild the city as it was before. What are you supposed to do? It's gone. So Lord Brahma is in a similar situation. The universe is destroyed for the most part. The heavenly planets are still there, but that's relatively less. The sinful living entities are more in the material world. So the majority of the creation is destroyed. He has to recreate it again, but Krishna said, don't be anxious. I'll give you the intelligence as to what to do, how to do it, and you won't be affected by your acts. So we all have a particular service deputed to us by Krishna to perform. So, and in that, of course, there's specific service and there's general service. Everything we're doing in Krishna consciousness is all deputed by us to Krishna. It may not be that Krishna personally, Garbha Dakashaya Vishnu, lying on the causal ocean, comes to us, grants us darshan, and then speaks these verses. Of course, it's our fortune we have these verses, but it may not be that Krishna personally assigns us the service. That service is assigned to the spiritual master and Vaishnavas as well. And we should see it, we should have the vision that whatever is coming my way, whatever service I'm being asked to do, within reason, of course. There's conditions to everything you could say, but whatever service I'm being asked to do is my spiritual master asking it of me, and it's Krishna asking it of me. As being Krishna wants me to perform this particular service, and even I don't want to do it, as is often the case for conditioned souls like myself. Still, we should do it because Krishna wants us to do it. There's a nice story. Giriraj Swami, he writes, and I'll build you a temple, that for those of you who have gone to Juhu, Srila Prabhupada's quarters there, which are in one of the hotels, it's up. So if there are many different doors you enter into, there's like a sort of lobby area, and then there's a sort of inner chamber, and then you go again to Srila Prabhupada's personal rooms, and then there's even his bedroom is a little bit back. So there's quite thick walls separating, and quite thick doors too. There's big doors separating the outer lobby from Srila Prabhupada's quarters. So one day, Giriraj Swami and Tamal Krishna Goswami, they were in these outer, I guess you could say, reception area, and it was late at night, and I think during a time when Srila Prabhupada was sleeping or something like that, and even though Srila Prabhupada was often awake late, and I wasn't expected he would be awake at such a time. So anyway, Tamal Krishna Goswami and Giriraj Swami, they were discussing in this lobby area, and Srila Prabhupada was just speaking very softly as to not disturb Srila Prabhupada. And Tamal Krishna Giriraj Swami was the then temple president of Juhu Temple, Bombay Temple, Mumbai Temple. And Tamal Krishna Goswami, I think maybe he was the GBC or something at the time, I'm not sure. Or not, no. I don't know what he was doing there. I guess he was there because he was Srila Prabhupada's secretary at the time. It must have been, because that must have been 1977. So anyway, somehow or another, Tamal Krishna Goswami, he told Giriraj Swami that you should go to the bank and make a deposit. And Giriraj Swami, he's temple president. It was a big project, actually, especially at that time. Many things were going on. There were many devotees there, and especially when Srila Prabhupada was there, many devotees were. Srila Prabhupada was sick, and many devotees were aware of the fact, or thinking that, this will be the last time I may see Srila Prabhupada. So there are many devotees there in Bombay. There's a lot going on in Bombay. Giriraj Swami, he's the temple president. The construction is going on as they're there. So there's a lot of things going on. So Giriraj Swami, he says that, why should I take the deposit to the bank? There's so many people who could take the deposit to the bank. I'm the temple president, and there's so many things that I can do that other devotees can't necessarily do. For example, I'm extrapolating. It's not that every devotee can some Joe Schmo can just oversee that the construction workers aren't cheating, etc. like this. So there's so many things that he could have done, whereas, but anyway, Tamal Krishna Goswami is being persistent that you should take this deposit to the bank and you should personally deposit it, and Giriraj Swami was refusing to do it. Then Srila Prabhupada rings his bell from his room. It's late at night, and they're speaking in hushed voices. So Giriraj Swami goes into Srila Prabhupada's room. My memory is a little hazy, the details as to how this happened. But Srila Prabhupada says something along the lines, the import is this, that if the spiritual master asks you to do something, you should do it. And he says, Srila Prabhupada, he says to Giriraj Swami that, if the spirit, he gives an example to Giriraj Swami. He says, if the spiritual master tells you to go to the bank and you refuse, then where's the surrender? So then Giriraj Swami was amazed because he was, at least by his estimation, there was no way Srila Prabhupada could have heard such a thing. There were very thick doors separating, two sets of thick doors separating them, and not just like we have here, like one door after another. It's at an angle, in other words. So if you've been there, you can understand it. It's unlikely how such sound could penetrate. And he was speaking in hushed voices. How could Srila Prabhupada heard such a thing? So Giriraj Swami, he took it as the Paramatma was speaking to him through the external representation of the Paramatma, who is for him Srila Prabhupada. So we should see. So anyway, he took this instruction like that. That my god brother Tamal Krishna Goswami, who is himself a perfect representative of Srila Prabhupada, he was speaking like this to me, and actually it was directly indicative of Srila Prabhupada's own desires, not just Srila Prabhupada's desires. Srila Prabhupada's desires means Krishna's own desires. So Vaishnavas may be speaking to us. We should take that, or requesting us to do something. We should take that as Krishna personally requesting us of something. Of course, within reason, we should use intelligence like that. But generally, we should have this consciousness, and not the consciousness that I'm some big person and I'm too great for this service, as Giriraj Swami was. Of course, he was thinking in a different mindset. But sometimes, including myself especially, we can get on this mindset of thinking like this. But it's detrimental to our devotional service. No service is too, no service is insignificant when that service is done for Krishna. Every small thing is noticed by Krishna and is infinitely more glorious than any mundane service rendered in this material world. Just like, for example, the other day, one devotee, Guru Maharaj asked one devotee, he had some a cup full of dirt or something that had a bunch of sticks in it, and he asked one devotee to filter the sticks and stuff from the dirt. And it was quite, Avadut knows that dirt comes from the backyard. That's quite rough dirt. It's not sandy dirt. So anyway, this devotee, he was trying to get dirt from this very rough soilage, and he was filtering this dirt, trying to get fine dirt for maybe an hour and a half or something like this. I was thinking, my gosh, who would do such a thing in the material world? Such an insignificant act of service. But for the spiritual master, it's glorious. And his conception, that devotee's conception of rendering that service, it was perfect. A menial service for the spiritual master, executed very enthusiastically. All service in Krishna consciousness should be rendered as such, no matter how insignificant the service, whether it be given directly by Krishna, by the spiritual master, or by a Vaishnava, or just seeing the need that something needs done. That's another point. Seeing that something, just like something is dirty, we should clean it. There's first class, second class, third class intelligence. So first class intelligence is being able to do a service without even being first asked to do so. So these are just different things. I have different points. One other thing I wanted to mention is that despite there may be encouragement in the service, there may be no encouragement in the service. We may be doing something, we may be doing a particular service. Nobody has any sort of idea what's going on. Just like this front hall is cleaned every single day. Probably nobody ever sees anybody ever clean that front lobby, but it's being cleaned. It's acknowledged by Krishna. It's acknowledged also by the spiritual master. And whether or not acknowledgement is there, we should go on with our service. Even the opposite may be there. Of course, I'm not saying it's the case here. I'm just giving an example. That devotees may see that we're performing service, and they may discourage us from the service. But the spiritual master may be giving us encouragement. Just like the example I'm thinking of in mind is Srila Prabhupada. He was instructed to preach in the English language, and he was trying to do so in India, and he was receiving so much discouragement from his own godbrothers. Not often the case nowadays, but even and of course from his godbrothers and also just from the society in general. Our book distributors have good experience on a daily basis. There's so much discouragement in trying to preach Krishna consciousness. It's very easy. It's way easier to get to solicit discouragement than it is encouragement. So encouragement, discouragement, we should go on with the service regardless. Brahma, what was his encouragement? Of course, here, this is subcreation. He's again creating. But in the beginning, we were hearing in the second canto, what was his encouragement? He was there on a lotus, sitting alone. There's not even light. It was just dark. There was darkness in all directions. He was on a lotus flower. And then he goes down the lotus flower, eternally so. He can't find out the end. He just stops going down because he can't find out the source. It's pretty depressing. No association. Nothing's around him. At that point, he hadn't even received Vedic knowledge at that point because he had not been enlightened by Krishna, so far I understand. So what was his associate? What was his encouragement? But he received an instruction from Krishna. He took it to execute austerity. He took it to heart, and he executed it. What was the result? Krishna gave him intelligence, and he was enlightened from within by Krishna himself personally. So, another point is Brahma's side point, Uttama Adhikari. He's his own association, so he can function in such a situation. But regardless, our resolve should be that we're encouragement, discouragement, whatever the case, heaven or hell, we're given a particular service or some service needs done, we should do it for the sake of pleasing Krishna. We should see that we should try to render service to Krishna despite whatever is going on. One particular thing that came to my mind as I was referencing this book, and then I'll just end my class, is that just as in Bombay, the same Bombay, that Juhu temple, devotee, I think I've related this before. This is also coming in there in Mood and Mission, somewhere there. That devotees, they were staying at Juhu property, and for those who have been to Mumbai, you know it's quite a distance from the main. Of course, now it's a little bit connected, but it's quite some distance from the main part of the inner part of Mumbai, which was then basically near like, what is that? The Gate of India, sort of around that. The British quarters there. Mainly, that was the built-up area of Mumbai then. So devotees will go from Juhu and take a train all the way down there, because that's where the wealthy people are. They're making life members. They're approaching esteemed members of society. So they will go there daily. They will take a train, an hour to get there, and the scorching heat. It was hot. Even now, you go into India, it's hot. Especially Mumbai, too, is by the ocean. It gets hot, humid. And they have, the train cars, the metal train cars, maybe, 130 degrees outside, 120, 130 outside. So easily in that metal box, it's like an oven. So easily it's like 10, 20 degrees more. So they take, and it's crowded like it, just like, even today it's crowded like anything. So they're taking these stuffed hot trains for an hour one way and then riding back another way to go back to the temple when they have to come. And they go to the streets of Mumbai in the scorching heat. They can't find good water. The water is largely contaminated as it was then. Now it's a little bit different. Garga Muni, who relates, he was just there in the scorching sun all day. And many times they would just not, you go for life member service, I guess you would call it, trying to solicit life and enlist life members. It's not very encouraging. Because you're approaching many people as the wealthier, high-class men of society, which means they're puffed up for the most part. And it's quite involved. It's just like, you go to somebody's business or something like that, or a house. Well, first, you're uninvited. They don't want you there. So you have to somehow make your way to like meeting them. And then you meet them. Then you have to give as a long presentation, to solicit. Then I think it was 11,101 rupees, which is a lot of money then. So it's a pretty significant sum they're asking for people. So in other words, it could be such that you spend a lot of, as happens sometimes in book distribution, you spend a lot of time with somebody trying to sell them, particularly a bigger set like Bhagavatam or something, and then, they just say no. It's like quite discouraging. And sometimes you may go the whole day like that. You ride an hour in the hot, scorching sun. Sometimes they had heat strokes out there. And then, what do you have to show for that? Sometimes you take that train ride back in the hot, scorching heat still, and you didn't do anything all day. Nobody became a life member. Or, even it may be that people just spoke nasty things to them. And then you go back, they're living off rotten prasad for the most part. Even the water in Juhu, if there wasn't good water in Mumbai, what to speak of Juhu, which was then just like a village, basically. So mainly the whole, it was sewage water near that area they were laid. So the prasad isn't, prasad, but it wasn't necessarily high-class prasad. It was some boiled vegetables, which the vegetables they used were largely low-class, means it was on its way out like that. So that would be their prasad. Sometimes they wouldn't eat. Sometimes they wouldn't have proper access to water. At night, they would sleep. There's huge, they didn't use mosquito nets. The devotees didn't know to use mosquito nets. So practically every night they were being eaten alive by mosquitoes. It's described that they were sleeping on a concrete slab in the open, and then they had these huge rats there who will come and disturb their sleep, both in terms of just waking them up, also biting them. Is described that there would be sometimes blood there on the concrete from the rats just nibbling at the devotees' bodies, and cockroaches, things like this. So all in all, what sort of situation is that? Who the hell would like? What's the encouragement in that sort of situation, And then even the devotees present at the Juhu temple, it's not like they got along. It's not like, of course, maybe some, I don't want to speak broadly. But for example, there was one such devotee that. I mean, it's quite a tense atmosphere, you know. Well, I mean, when you're with devotees, I mean, when you're living with people and like that, relationships can get pretty strained. There's one instance. There was a potentially murderous altercation between two devotees that took place involving a hand axe. So Srila Prabhupada, he sent one devotee away because of that. He wanted to take care of the garden, and the temple president wasn't giving him funds or facility to take care of the garden. So Prabhupada personally instructed him to take care of the garden. He wasn't being allowed to take care of the garden because the temple didn't have money. So there's so many things like that, you know. Yeah, they have full-on deity worship to take care of them. Deities are under a shack. And anyways, there's so many things there. So yeah, I mean, it's not ideal circumstances. Nevertheless, devotees went on, and they continued their service there, and they were blessed by Srila Prabhupada. You see that actually, I was thinking many of the devotees that were involved in that Juhu project, largely they're still around, or they were around. Some have left their bodies now, but you see names like Madhudvisa Prabhu, Brahmananda Prabhu, Giriraj Swami, Tamal Krishna Goswami, Saurabhi Prabhu. There are many. There's so many who like helped there. Achyutananda Prabhu, I think he was there for a little bit. We all know his name. What is that?
He went to South Achyutananda.
He traveled around, but he was there for at least at some. I mean, I don't think he stayed there, but I think he was just passing through. But many of these big names, they've become big names now because they stuck to the movement. So you see, particularly those who stuck in Juhu and served there, they received Srila Prabhupada's blessings. Of course, that could be vague, but principally you could take it they continue in Krishna consciousness. Consequently, we have the story of one disciple of Srila Prabhupada in Vrindavan who was being taxed by management. Vrindavan is also difficult to live in. And he wanted to become free from entanglement and management and just chant. And he wrote Srila Prabhupada one letter to this effect. And Srila Prabhupada, I forget the exact reply, but Srila Prabhupada said, I believe he responded something. There's an in-mood mission, something to the effect that you should stay there and continue in management. And the disciple, he just abandoned his position, and he just eventually went away from Krishna consciousness. So you see the contrast, in other words. One devotee acting for his own sense gratification, even within the supposed terms of Krishna consciousness, whereas those who, despite horrible circumstances from all angles of vision, they continue in their service, they were blessed by the Supreme Personality of Godhead and their spiritual master. So our determination should be such, as is Brahma's. So I'll end there. It's almost 40. So, and take any comments or questions anybody has now.
This devotee that you were speaking about, who left his management post in Vrindavan,
Yeah.
Jayadvaita Maharaj speaks about how he later on met this devotee, and this devotee was complaining to Jayadvaita Maharaj that Prabhupada didn't engage him the way that he would like to be engaged, more or less. And Jayadvaita Maharaj snapped back that he's your spiritual master. He wants you to do something. And if you have done it, you'd have gotten the mercy. But now this person is bereft. It's not that he was on that high platform that he thought he was on, and that didn't work out for him. And he didn't end up getting the mercy of the spiritual master either. So Jayadvaita Maharaj is making the point that if you just stick it out, you get the mercy. And Parameshwar Prabhu always also says this so many times. He's seen so many devotees leave, but little did they know that there's a huge flood of mercy right around the corner. If you had just stuck it out, just right around the corner, it's a huge flood of mercy. So he was making this point that it's always good to stick it out no matter what for the pleasure of the spiritual master.
Yeah, one thing I've been thinking recently regarding, because it's quite often, you serve Krishna, you see the mercy, Yasya prasada, bhagavat prasada, by gaining the favor of the spiritual master, you get Krishna's mercy. But what is that mercy? What does that mean, mercy? Generally, you think of mercy, we think of some like good situation. Could not be. Because Krishna's mercy also, I've spoken of this previously, but is svajana dukkha dukhitami. You suffer one misery after another. So that could also be the mercy of Krishna. So, yeah, despite however form that mercy may come in other words, we should be open-minded, however Krishna may give us his mercy. It was Krishna's mercy upon Lord Brahman, for instance, that he destroyed the whole material, not whole, but the material world, yeah, because they allowed him to perform more service, ultimately. It put Brahma into initial anxiety and depression, but it allowed him to continue performing more service. So, I'm just sort of like commenting on what you're saying. It's sometimes difficult to like that receiving the mercy of the spiritual. That mercy may be around the corner, but even we may be receiving the mercy, but we can't. It may be such that we can't understand that as mercy, because that mercy, it doesn't come in a stereotype form. Just like it was Srila Prabhupada's mercy. I mean, Krishna's mercy upon Srila Prabhupada. He just destroyed the Jhansi project. Completely. Well, how merciful Krishna was that he just smashed Srila Prabhupada's preaching in India and inspired him to come to America. And you see that the result of that. That is understandable years after the fact. But in the time of, even 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years after that collapse in Jhansi, how could Srila Prabhupada understand why Krishna is executing such a thing? So
it seems that when you stick it out, and hindsight is always 20/20, you actually see, whoa,
yeah.
Thank you, Krishna, you're doing this to me. It really helped.
Yeah. Hindsight is 20/20. Often we don't have the benefit, just another comment, we don't have the benefit of viewing things in hindsight, and often we're in the midst of things. Just like Brahma, he's in the midst of something, he's depressed, he's anxious about what to do. So often is the case. So it's good to have faith in Krishna, that Krishna is my protector, I don't know what's going on. Somehow he's bringing me closer to him. So, anything else? Yes.
Hare Krishna. So, you mentioned Giriraj Swami. And first of all, thank you for cooking yesterday. It was a good prasadam. Appreciate that. And Giriraj Swami, so he asked Prabhupada one time, Prabhupada asked him, how will this movement go on when you're not, here? When he said, how will this movement go on? And Giriraj Maharaj said that in the Dongri chant 16 rounds and follow the 4 regular principles. But then Prabhupada said to him, he said organization and intelligence. So he said, let's see. Yeah, it's right here. He said, Srila Prabhupada's words were packed with meaning. He said, I realize we have to be sincere and chant our 16 rounds and follow the 4 regulated principles, but we were meant to do more than that, maintain our own spiritual lives. We were meant to preach, to expand the movement and increase the number of devotees. And to do that required both organization and intelligence. The endeavor to spread Krishna consciousness in an intelligent, organized way was our service to Srila Prabhupada and Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, as much as we chant the holy names and follow the regular principles. So we have to be organized. I don't know. It's okay. We do. We have a big responsibility to save the world, right? But sometimes we can't do little things correctly, and we have these big plans to save the world. It's actually a joke, actually. Haribol. Sometimes
I also had a question. It seems that this is one, you were saying that maybe Lord Brahma is not a pure devotee when he's seeing the form of
Not exactly that. This Lord Brahma actually is a pure devotee. That point is made in some purport that's coming around here. But he may not, him pure devotee, but he may be, how Krishna is speaking here could be facetious, or he could be just saying for the sake of saying, but...
Especially the next verse.
Yeah. Oh, whoops. Yeah.
This and the next. Since you have desired to increase the population innumerably, making it clear that it was his desire to create.
What is that? You could explain?
Well, this one, he says, when you become free from the gross and subtle conceptions. And the next one, he says, when you have desired, because since you have desired to increase the population innumerably, which, like you said, it can be taken in an instructive way also, that Brahma, because of gross and subtle conceptions, wanted to increase the population of the universe, which is the influence of the mode of passion. And then, of course, it can also be taken in the other way, that he wanted to do all of this because of service.
So it seems that in the Bhagavatam, there's also the example of Prajapati Daksha, who chants the Hansa Guhya prayers, which are already present in the Vedic literature. And although he is not a pure devotee, he still gets darshan of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And I'm unable to think of another instance in the Srimad Bhagavatam where someone who's not, we can even say it's the demigods, they get to see the Supreme Personality of Godhead. You know, for example, when they're fighting with Vritrasura, and they compose such amazing prayers, but at the end of it all, it's simply for material. But they get to see the Supreme Lord. Both Prajapati Daksha and the demigods, they get to see the Supreme Lord in his 8-handed form, holding all these weapons, standing on Garuda. It's amazing. But how is it that you see the Supreme Personality of God, speak to him, hear from him, but still the material desires remain? And we don't hear that Prajapati Daksha has gone back home, back to Godhead after this, or any such thing. Right?
How? I don't know. I'll just be straight up. How is that possible? Don't know. Presumably it has some effect on their consciousness. You can't just lump them in among, and definitely they're not ordinary souls. Even those demigods who gain darshan of Krishna, they're not ordinary demigods. Because the darshan of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, I mean, even when they're offering prayers in the milk ocean, for example, they don't have communion with Kshiradaka Vishnu. Brahma does because he's more elevated among them. He has the qualification. But it's not an ordinary thing to do so. So it's, in other words, you can't discount the fact that he had darshan. That's very significant. At the same time, it's, one such answer is because it's never forced, as the point is made here. The Lord can never force the living entity to give up his material desires, or force the living entity he can, actually, but he won't, generally. And he may not do so for such personalities because, I don't know, they have their own motives, and he may desire to retain those motives. So whether one is completely pure, generally, my understanding is like this, that if you see the Supreme Personality of Godhead, I mean, it's all purifying. His sight is all purifying. So, of course, others saw him. One point is that they may be seeing them, but may only partially be seeing him. It's just like, because the qualification for seeing him is through the eyes anointed with pure love. Otherwise, the eyes may be seeing him, but it's through imperfect vision of, this is an object of my sense gratification, to some degree. As the demigods see the Supreme Lord, acknowledge him as the Supreme Lord, simultaneously, they also view the Supreme Lord as a sort of order supplier. In one sense, it's kind of like a little gross to say like that, but they pray to him for supplying their demands, in other words. So the conceptions of their vision of him is tinged with these things. Just like the holy name is pure, we're chanting the holy name, why aren't we getting purified from it? Because we have offenses, we have our own material desires, we have our own conceptions with which we approach the holy name. So I would apply the same to the rupa of the Supreme form. It's the Supreme Lord himself. So, there was one other point, but I think that generally covers it. So, is that okay? This is my understanding.
What do you think?
Another point is so many demons saw Krishna. It doesn't necessarily qualify them. They saw him, but they didn't fully see him. Some saw him in different, just like, for example, that arena example is given. Krishna entered the arena, Mathura. Everybody saw Krishna who didn't see Krishna, but they saw him in so many different ways, according to their vision, also according to the advancement in devotional service. That's one thing. So.
Yeah. It depends on the Supreme Lord bestowing his kripa siddhi. And he doesn't do it all the time. Also, different acharyas explain the different forms of the Lord bestow different levels of that kripa siddhi also. With Vishnu, it's less than that of Krishna. So, for instance, demons who are killed by Krishna, they attain liberation. But that's not necessarily true of demons killed by, a form of Vishnu.
Uh-huh.
So there's also different levels of perfection that are offered. And it's the same, yeah, exactly what you were saying. And even among Krishna's pastimes, you see differences.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
I mean, where do the acharyas say that it depends on the form? Depends on the form about how much kripa you get.
Laghu Bhagavatamrita is mentioned there.
You have a reference? I mean, I know that
It
one
specifically
point.
comes.
It's about killing, right? There's a difference about Krishna killing and Vishnu killing.
The point is made that the form of Krishna is specifically more merciful than the other.
So we see that then that Krishna smashed Indra with Govardhan in the pastime of Govardhan, but then just whatever few chapters later, again Indra decides to wage a war with Krishna because Indra comes to steal the Parijata tree.
Mm-hmm.
No. So, how do we understand that pastime?
Could be out of Leela, possibly. I don't exactly know Indra's position ever having so done that. You have to see some commentary there. But it could be out of the sake of Leela, Krishna is arranging like that. Just like out of the sake of Leela, he arranged for Brahma. Of course, Brahma is on a different level than Indra, but still, nevertheless, Indra is also a devotee, for example. For example, Varuna, he stole Nanda Maharaj. That was right, but why? He's a devotee. And out of Leela, that was done. So it could be such a case out of that. It could also be his own perverted mentality. It could be both. Krishna can, just like demons, they have the perverted mentality. And Krishna, he arranges, he makes the best use of it, not bad bargain exactly, but he makes use of that and for his own enjoyment like that. So
You see this, in fact, even with the most merciful incarnation of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Ramachandra Puri didn't become purified.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not, yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's
That's with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who
Yeah.
was even more merciful than Krishna himself.
Mm-hmm. Anything from the women? Yes.
What's like the difference between just like having material desires and harboring those material desires?
Harboring means, who amongst us doesn't have material desires, let's be honest. But harboring means holding on to something. It's just like trying to, material desire may be there, as inevitable for conditioned souls like us, but harboring means that material desire is there. I understand that material desire is there, and I'm not going to give it up. Or I'm acting on that material desire, whatever it may be. Say, common thing, many people want to be successful in their career. You see this. And they have some material desire for material position, profit from their job, high salary, something like that. Material desire, and they're perfectly okay with that material desire. They have no problem with that material desire. It doesn't mean necessarily you can't be a successful businessman in Krishna service, but there's when you act on that material desire and harbor it, so it requires introspection a little bit. Sometimes we may have material desires, may not be cognizant that we have those desires, but if we're cognizant, especially if we're aware that we have some material desire, and if we start approaching Krishna with that material desire, or just trying to maybe not even approaching Krishna, maybe just trying to pursue material things in general, just like we may pursue high, so many things. So, and succinctly, it's just awareness of it and not letting it go. Whereas we may have a material desire, and sex desire is the common thing. It's very difficult to give up, but we try to give it up. We try to become detached from it. Consequently, it's very easy not to give it up and just act on that material desire. You see the results of that. So, it's the difference between harboring and... Is that okay? Is that clear? Anything else?
You gotta get a higher taste, that's the thing. You can't give up this lower taste, you gotta get a higher taste. There's no way.
Yeah, it's true.
Unless you feel it in your heart, there's no way to give up on this sex business.
Jai. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.